Testing. Are we on here? Okay, great. You might just for a second or two. Oh yeah, good idea. Good idea. You just can't move, yeah. Don't move at all, Kat, just sit still. Okay, so hi everybody, my name is Alex Bazans. I'm a partner with Real Estate Equities. We're a 50-year multifamily development firm that's based in St. Paul, Minnesota, that owns and manages around 4,000 housing units. The majority of our housing units are here in the Twin Cities. We also have some properties in Indiana as well as Wisconsin. Our company, throughout our history, has done in excess of 12,000 housing units, comprising of more than 70 projects throughout our company's history. And one other point that I wanted to mention too is that we own and manage all the projects that we build. We own them generally long-term. We also provide full on-site staff at our projects to manage our buildings. So this, you guys, is just an example of 4 recent projects that we've completed. We worked on these projects with Cass Wilson as well, and Laux Associates. These are, I would say, representative of the project that we're proposing to do here on Wooddale. Spring House is 168 housing units in Coon Rapids. That project was just finished, fully leased, actually in April of this year. Eastgate is 135 workforce housing units that we did in Rochester. Sonder House is 127 units that we recently completed in Brooklyn Center around the same time as Coon Rapids. And then the Winslow is actually 172 senior affordable housing units that we did in West St. Paul. These 2 photos here are an example rendering of what we're proposing to build at this project. These are also represented on the boards too, which gives you a good idea for what we've proposed here. You'll see, and I'll get into this a little bit throughout the presentation, but we tiered the building down where the longer leg is actually 3 stories versus 4 stories. And we did that to have less of an impact to the neighborhood. Proposed density and parking. So we've proposed 114 units. Right now there's 30 1-bedroom, 1-bath units proposed, 47 2-bed, 2-bath, and 37 3-bed, 2-bath. The density is 42 units per acre. Right now we've got 205 parking stalls laid out. 117 of those are underground spaces, 88 are surface, which provides a 1.8 parking ratio per unit. This right here is a comparison, and I wanted to kind of lay this out this way because there was a lot of thought that's gone into this initial concept before even showing it to you all. We put a lot of time and thought into it. We spoke with a couple of the folks that we were told were the neighborhood leads, J.W. Starrett and Brad Benson. And in hearing some of their comments and concerns that would likely come up with the neighborhood, we tried to kind of integrate that in the front end before actually even showing the concept of what we're proposing. So what you'll see here on the left is the original concept. There was 124 units. It was a full 4-story building. The parking ratio was 1.34 spaces per unit. It had multiple access points and one directly off of Wooddale. And then in hearing some of the comments that we heard, we rerouted the access basically to be directly off the cul-de-sac and off the other side of Wooddale to eliminate kind of the traffic impact that would impact the neighborhood right there. We also figured out a way to lower the density of the building so that the longer leg of the building is 3 stories versus 4, because we thought that would be kind of a softer impact to the neighborhood. We were able to enhance the parking ratio considerably too with this revised layout and add a strip of parking, which is also the access point on the far, I believe it's north side of the building. So those are some of the main changes that came up with the revisions. And the next slide is going to just show you kind of a reiteration of what I just said, but the main changes that came up from the initial concept to where we are now, 124 units is now 114. The parking ratio increased from 1.34 to 1.8 spaces per unit. The building height was reduced from a full 4-story building to a 4-story building with 3 stories on the south end of the east leg of the building. Again, the property access changed from Wooddale Avenue to the cul-de-sac, and the garage entry was rerouted. This just is a list of some of the unit amenities and community amenities for the building. We do high-quality cabinetry, hard surface countertops, in-unit washer and dryer, vinyl plank flooring, and we have 9-foot ceiling height in our buildings. Community amenities, community patio, club room, fitness center, playground, dog run. Some of the sustainability requirements and features for the building here. We're planning to build this to Minnesota Green Community Standards. The development will adhere to the Minnesota Green Community Standards guidelines and will address the following items: LED light fixtures, Energy Star rated appliances and windows, high efficiency mechanical systems and low flow water fixtures, low VOC paints and adhesives, water efficient irrigation systems, and we're also planning to do solar on the roofs of the building. We also understand that there's a process that we go through in terms of design review with the city to address all of the green initiatives that are the city's priorities. So that will be part of the process as well. This just shows the proposed affordability requirements. So the income restrictions for a single person household are $44,100, all the way up to $62,940 for a 4-person household. The proposed rent for each unit type is $1,138 for 1-bedrooms, $1,364 for 2s, and $1,572 for 3s. Again, the rental income, the rent is going to be restricted to 60% of the area median income. And that is the end of the presentation. So I leave that now up to any questions you all have. Again, we have our architectural staff, we have another representative from Real Estate Equities here, and we have our civil engineer here too. So. Sure.
Oh, okay. So my first question is, how many 3-bedroom units are you planning on building?
I believe, what's the count? 37.
So if the apartment complex were full, how many total occupants do you expect to have? If you've got 114 units, 37 of them have 3 bedrooms. What's the total occupancy if the place was full?
Well, it's hard to gauge exactly how many individuals will be living there. I would say, based on our unit mix, I mean, what do you think, Petro? Yeah, he's kind of doing math off the cuff based on the density. It's hard to. Yeah, we could do some research on that and follow up with Yana.
Yeah, I want to know that, actually.
Yeah,
I live right across the street.
Sure.
And I'm not in favor of this at all.
Yeah.
Having, an instant 114 at least neighbors in one fell swoop is not what I had envisioned when I moved into this neighborhood. Mm-hmm. How many parking spaces per unit?
So we've got 1.8 stalls per unit. A large portion of those will be underground, and then we also have surface parking. That was laid out right here, actually. We've got 88 surface stalls and 117 underground stalls. So the 1.8 parking ratio, frankly, for a comparison to other projects, is actually on the high end of what we're doing for other projects. So we feel pretty confident that that parking ratio is a strong parking ratio for this product type.
Is there a maximum occupancy per unit? For example, if a family of 10 were to move into a 3-bedroom, is there any sort of limit on that?
Yeah, Patrick, I'll let you speak to that from a management standpoint.
We can't get 2 per bedroom. We don't always get that many people living there. So we'll follow up on a couple recently built projects that have similar units as if we prefer exactly.
And you talked about the minimum, salary or requirements. So they have to have, as one of the requirements, that you need to have a job to move into the facility?
Yeah, so we have minimum income thresholds for the folks that are going to be living there. They're at 60% of the area median income. So the income range for a single individual is around $44,000, all the way up to around $63,000 for a family of 4.
So you do have to have a job to move in?
Yes, you have to have an income.
And tell us about the driveway. I mean, how positive is it that you're not going to change your mind and open up the driveway at this end of the building? ahead.
So the site plan that we've laid out so far, again, is an initial concept plan, hasn't been approved by the city. We've shown it to the city. It generally seems favorable. This is what we're planning to do. So we will not be adding another drive off of Wooddale. We intentionally kind of rerouted the access in this design based on the feedback that we were getting from other people that we talked to. For example, J.W. Starrett and Brad Benson, so.
Did you talk to the fire department about that?
We have not had any direct communication yet with the fire department.
Now, what do you anticipate them saying in terms of congestion of traffic right across the street from the fire?
From what we're hearing so far, just from city staff and our discussions of the site plan, at least at this point, there's not any major concerns with that. That'll be a process that we go through as we go through the planning process with the city. So in doing that process, the fire department will be involved, and we'll determine that at a later date.
So if the fire department is not okay with those plans that you have right now, you will be needing to open up another driveway entrance?
Potentially, that's going to be up to the city's determination. So this.
Current existing condition, that's where the church is entering, so I don't see why city staff or zoning would be opposed to it, or even the fire department, because currently that's the access for this person.
Sure, but the church's number of congregation is not nearly as big as an apartment complex.
Don't disagree with you at all on that, but again, from a city zoning and access point of view, it's still the same entrance. So as long as we're not moving it, and we're working with what's there, there really shouldn't be any reason the city would not allow this access point.
And you're going to cap it at 3 floors?
We're going to cap the majority, so the leg here, I'll just point this out, so this leg is 4 stories right here.
Oh,
This leg is 3 stories.
okay, and you're not planning
And
on
it
going,
starts right there at 4, goes to 3.
and you're not planning on going up, higher?
No, we're not. No, we intentionally revised this to be kind of a softer landing for the neighborhood. The original design had a full 4-story building, and so this was a revised version of that.
I wanted to ask another question. Is Jacqueline Kramer here?
I believe she's coming. I don't know if she's here yet.
Okay.
Ma'am, my name's Sean Walther, I'm the manager, and Jacqueline will be in as soon as she can, but I'm here at the moment representing city staff.
Okay. I was just wondering, I was copied on a couple of emails about Jacqueline Kramer or the city council talking to neighbors about the project.
That's the purpose of this meeting. First is for the developer to present the information. Our formal process has not yet been done.
Is what? I'm sorry?
Has not yet been done. We do not have a formal application at this point, so this is an early stage news of the game.
What's prohibiting the formal application?
Nothing's prohibited. The timing of the applicant, they have not yet submitted.
But they're-
Timing-wise, they didn't talk about schedule yet, but timing-wise, they were anticipating an application next month, but we do not know exactly.
Is it a done deal? I mean, is there anything stopping the application process?
Oh man, there's nothing stopping someone from applying, but it's the development is not a done deal. We have to go through a city process for a city council approval. And please, it's like a fight additional public hearing. So we're very early in the process. Again, no formal applications. We've had some preliminary conversations with the developer, but that's being said at the staff level.
What's the status of the city council's expectation for approval or not?
Well, I can't speak to the city council.
I'm not the city council, I can read it.
Sure. Sure.
Thank you. Lynette Dumalaga, I'm your city council member. I was appointed upon the resignation of Councilmember Mavity. So very similar to everybody else here, I'm here to just sit here and listen and hear feedback that the neighborhood has to the city. So again, there's no formal process that has been submitted. And so there is no done deal because no one has approved anything. There's not an application submitted yet. So this is part of the process where we hear feedback from all of you that are here tonight, and then the developer will, take what they want. So does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, great.
The city council is completely aware of what's going on.
I am aware that this is a development that's proposed. But I haven't talked to other city council members, if that's what you're asking. I have not, so, but, you know, this site has been vacant, and there was a previous applicant, a previous person who did apply. Or I don't know if they, yeah, I think they did apply. Sean? No, okay. No, so obviously this site is of interest. But I have not talked to my colleagues on council regarding this particular project. Does that answer your question? Okay. I'll let you ask more.
So I do have another question about the abandoned building on Highway 7 that's also in St. Louis Park. I mean, what is it with all of these apartment complexes now coming up in this residential neighborhood? No. You go ahead.
So I do want to be respectful of this developer's time, and if there are other questions regarding this, but we can talk about, if you're talking about the Place project, is that what you're referring to? Okay.
Owned by the bank now.
Owned by the, yeah, no, okay. So, yes, so we can, you and I can talk about that if you have specific questions, but we want to, obviously, there might be others that have more.
I think the main concern is the density that's going to be in this area. The density that's going to be in this area when supposedly all these apartment buildings get built in the next 4 or 5 years. That's, I think, my concern.
Yeah.
You said it's going to be 1.8. Thank you. You mentioned that it's going to be 1.8 parking stacks per unit.
Yes, that's correct.
This is going to be pretty much like a low-income housing full, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a workforce housing project that has income restrictions.
Are
That's-
those parking spots are going to be included in the price, or you're going to rent that on top of?
So surface parking is free. Underground parking will be rented.
So surface parking is going to be only 88,
Yes, that's correct.
and we probably have to assume that not too many people is going to rent the other parking. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Hi there, I apologize for being a little late. You may have covered this, so what is I have a lot of questions, but is this all affordable housing, or can you talk a little bit about what that is and what your plans are, or did you?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to address that, yeah. So the project is considered 100% workforce housing. Again, the income restrictions on the units in the building are restricted to 60% of the area median income. That income level for a single individual is about $44,000 annually. For a family of 4, it's up to $63,000 approximately. The rental range between 1 and 3 bedroom units. Ones are, I think, $1138. Twos are, I don't have it right in front of me right now, but twos are in the $1,300 range, and threes are in like kind of the $1,500 range. So that's kind of some background on that.
So how do you differentiate your, as a developer of these particular types of properties? So I looked at the internet, and apparently you have market rate, you have all different types of properties.
We do.
So how do you compare yourself, say, to PPL or who also are looking to build in this
How do I compare? I mean, we have some similarities and some differences. Common Bond and PPL are two well-known, well-recognized nonprofit affordable housing developers here in the Twin Cities. We do similar projects. They both do, I think, projects that utilize the 4% tax credit program and the 9% tax credit program. Most of the projects that we do utilize the 4% tax credit program, which is part of what this project would consider. You know, I would say there's similarities between our companies and theirs. We all self-manage the properties that we build and own them long term. I don't know a lot about the details of how their companies' inner workings are, so I can't really speak to that, but there's definitely similarities.
So you do self-manage all the properties that you develop?
We do, yeah.
Have you ever sold properties anywhere else?
We have sold properties. We've been around for 50 years. So over the history of our company, we've sold a lot of properties, yeah. But these projects that we build, you know, we're required to own them for a minimum of 15 years. So at an absolute minimum, we'll own this for 15 years.
So on your website, I also noticed that you do solicit for investors in your company, so that would be outside of the typical tax financing that you would apply for. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, so throughout our history, we've done, you know, some non-tax credit work as well. You know, we've had private investors invest in projects with us throughout the years, you know, dating back to when the company started in the 70s and 80s, frankly. You know, this project, for example, is a low-income housing tax credit development, would likely have one single investor that would invest in the project, and they would be invested in the project for a period of 15 years.
I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but what is expected to happen to the property values in this neighborhood when this conference is completed?
You know, it's hard to speak to that because, I mean, we've done some internal research to kind of look at that. And frankly, what's shown is a trend of value growth with some other properties that we've looked at. But I can't really speak to that specifically. I mean, these projects generally spur economic development in locations where they're built. They spur consumer spending, they help fuel retail growth, and they generally are, you know, economic drivers in the communities where they're built. So we see them as having a very positive impact in those communities.
With the lower income complexes,
Yeah. I do, yeah, I do.
So I have a couple questions. Just to be honest with you, I'm very resentful of this project, and I hate hearing you use the word product. It's not a product. This changes our neighborhood. I also haven't seen much representation from the African American community here, and you're talking about you don't want to use low income as your word. I'd like to know, is there Section 8 available for this housing? And also, I was wondering about, you said the 44,000 income was the cutoff.
For a single individual, it is.
Correct. So could you address those questions, please?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of Section 8, this is not a project-based Section 8 project. We have to be open and fair housing, obviously, to folks that have a Section 8 voucher. So we do anticipate there being some level of that. It's hard to predict exactly what that will be. In terms of the single individual household income, I think I answered that. It's around 44,000, up to 63,000 for a family of 4. And then your first question, you just commented on me saying the word product. So I can not use that term. Is there any other questions you had, or? Okay.
Hi. One question, one quick follow-up. I think that from an affordable housing standpoint, it's important that we all remember that in Minnesota, the minimum wage would basically put it at between like a $450 to $630, depending on if you're making the $8 to $15 per month. So the one-bed unit is well above what a minimum wage threshold would be. So I think there's both an acknowledgement that we all need to make that we're not talking about affordable housing at a very bare minimum of minimum wage. I also think then that calls into mind, like, how are we defining affordability? I think that with respect, the parallel that you are trying to draw between low income and African American is just like not accurate, and that's not productive for this conversation. I want to go back to what the gentleman up front mentioned as it relates to, I know this conversation is about this development, but I think what you're hearing from the neighborhood, for the city council people that are in the room, is that this Elmwood neighborhood is experiencing an immense amount of development, and it's coming at us from all corners. So we've got the place that was already mentioned, we've got the corridor of 36th Street, Union Congregational Church is trying to develop. We have the Jaspin Press that is looking to be development, and this. So I think you're feeling the pressure, and I'm sorry because you're the one here now, but what we really want is a conversation with the city about the vision for this neighborhood and understanding the broader strategy in the density and the impact it's going to have on the neighborhood. So I know that's not a specific question for you, sir, but I think it's a reality that in order for any of these developments to really be able to get off the ground, we need to be able to have an honest conversation with our city councilman.
I think we had one down here.
Thank you. Me again. I agree with you pretty much in everything that you said. The other thing I want to ask is regarding the project itself. Do you have any plans, or do you know how this city, because the other projects that you have are out of St. Louis Park, right? Do you know how this city manage garbage, recycling, and compost? Do you have any of that in mind regarding this project? Because we have very good programs of composting and recycling and garbage, but one of the biggest issues with high density buildings that I have seen around the Twin Cities is the way of disposal of big things, and compost is not part of the program. Normally it's not law in St. Louis Park. Do you have any plans regarding that to offer your tenants, your renters, those programs, or not?
You know, just to be honest with you, we have not really delved into that level of detail on the plans for the, removal of garbage and compost and things like that. Traditionally at our projects, we utilize kind of the standard means of removing garbage and recycling and things like that, that other buildings use through different companies that do that service. But we haven't gotten to the point where we're actually looking into that.
Okay, and my other question is this company, Real Estate Equities, all the projects that you have or that you do are low-income housing, or you do different kind of projects?
We do different kind of projects. So what I would say is that our development activity in the last 4 to 5 years has specifically been focused on doing affordable housing, both workforce housing and senior affordable housing. Historically, the company has been around for 50 years, so we do own some market rate properties. We own some older kind of NOAA properties. We don't do much new market rate development. We do some mixed income projects too that have different income levels in them as well. But most of everything we're doing today that's a new project has some level of affordability to it.
Okay, yeah, and absolutely, and that's part of the law too. Normally, it should be, I think, about 9% should be low income or affordable in any kind of new buildings, but why is this specific project all low income? Do you have is a good reason why this project specifically is going to be low income all, not mixed? Why are other people excluded from this project, from the opportunity to live around here?
Well, there's a huge void right now in demand and need for more workforce housing. So that's, again, kind of the core of our business and our development activities, building these kinds of projects. So, we think that is a good use for the site.
Okay, and my last question, I'm sorry about it. If somebody else wanted to ask anything. Are you going to request TIF money, options for this?
We are requesting TIF as part of the project.
Thank you.
I'd like to know what is going to stop or monitor or whatever the word is, that a four-person household is a four-person household, not 10, 12, two families. What safeguards are there that doesn't happen?
So we've got a full-service on-site management staff plan for this project. Our company has a policy where we won't rent units to more than 2 individuals per bedroom. So for a 3-bedroom unit, it would be a max of 6 individuals living there.
Okay, so that's a firm rule that you abide by.
Mm-hmm. It is. That's correct.
I guess I'm hooked on automobiles. You have 117 underground units, right?
Underground parking stalls. Yeah.
Parking units.
Yep.
So that's basically 1 per apartment.
Yeah, just north of
Is
that.
1 allotted to every apartment?
Is 1 what?
1 parking underground allotted to every apartment?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, they're available to all the residents that are living there. There's a cost to rent them. So if a single individual, for example, lives in a 1-bedroom and parks their car on the surface lot, they're entitled to do that. They don't necessarily have to pay for an underground stall.
So what's the expense over and above your monthly for underground parking?
It depends. We haven't finalized what the actual number will be. Generally, we're charging about $75 per underground parking stall per month. That's pretty common for our other projects. We haven't finalized that number here yet, but did you have something, Patrick? No. Oh, sorry.
And your total parking spaces is 204 spaces?
205, I believe.
205?
Yeah. Which is, again, it's a 1.8 parking ratio, which...
What happens to the extra cars if there's not enough parking spaces?
Well, we're pretty confident this will be a sufficient parking ratio. It's hard for me to say exactly what will happen. Our design and the entire intention of the design is to mitigate any issues of people actually parking in the streets, because I know that's a big concern of yours. Mm-hmm. And that's why our parking ratio here is 1.8, which is higher than we actually do at other projects. So we really put a lot of thought and intention into designing the building and laying it out in a way that would sufficiently park it and avoid street parking being an issue for you guys.
I guess it's more of a city issue. What is the city going to do with all those extra cars if you have more than 205 cars? So.
Me again, sorry.
That's fine.
Are you getting the feeling that most of us aren't real happy about this? How many entrances to the apartment complex are there?
So,
And where are they located?
I'll show you right here. So, here's the main entrance to the surface lot. It's right up the cul-de-sac off of Wooddale. And then you have a secondary access point before the cul-de-sac. And that actually gets you down into the garage entry right here. So those are the 2 access points.
For all of the tenants, there's 2 places for them to come in and out of the building.
Yes. Are you talking about the entrance to the building?
I'm sorry, I'm referring to the doors that people can enter the building.
Thank you for clarifying. The front entry, so the main entryway is right here. And that's the primary access point, and there's secondary ones here and here.
about the first floor? Are those individual doors, units?
Not off the parking lot. I mean, they're interior doors to the units as you access the building. The building also is going to be a controlled key fob system, so we'll have good lighting. We'll have, a key fob access that's monitored for anybody accessing the building.
I'm sorry, can you point out those?
The entries?
One right here.
Okay. 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 Right.
So how does pedestrian traffic come into the building? From the street, walking, such and such?
How does like people just walking in the neighborhood, or?
Well, people going to the stores, walking through the neighborhood, accessing the housing from different areas of town. But basically pedestrian walking.
Through the entryways to the building. There's 3 of them.
Are you referring to the sidewalks or
Oh, yeah, the sidewalk. A lot of people walk down Wooddale and they get over to Excelsior or they go up to 36. You get a lot of traffic from buildings across the street, So that's the impact of the lot.
To be clear, so, we'll have sidewalk as we currently have. We're proposing more sidewalk. There's connections to get access from the sidewalk to the building and then across.
Again, this might be a city thing. Will there be access to transit in this area instead of them all walking over to Excelsior Boulevard to get on the transit buses?
Good question. In terms of the location of the actual bus stop, I don't know exactly off the top of my head where that is.
Right in front of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously people living there are going to have access to light rail as well.
There is no bus route in our neighborhood right now, so that's need to know.
Yeah, that's something that we'll dive deeper into.
What are you planning on breaking ground if the application is approved?
Right now it's kind of a moving target, but we'd like to be able to break ground if we can this summer,
Next summer?
next summer.
How long do you plan it's going to take to complete the project?
The construction of this project would probably be 16 months from start to finish.
Oh, sorry. Falling asleep on the job. Wasn't actually falling asleep, but.
So I actually want to discuss infrastructure. So this is an R3 zoned property right now. And the reason it's R3, it's the infrastructure, the roads are not designed to have a high capacity living situation here. So with a background in traffic engineering, have the traffic studies been done in order for Wooddale to determine if Wooddale can even handle that? As somebody who lives on Wooddale itself, we already have traffic issues, we already have noise issues, and this will impact that directly as far as, and there's a reason it was zoned R3 and hasn't been changed. So working with the city planner, or talking with one of the city planners, there's a reason this has been an R3 development zoned property for so many years, is because that infrastructure is not designed to handle, Wooddale is not designed to handle that increased traffic volume.
Sir, to be clear, I just want to make sure so we can discuss that with staff. Are you referring to this street or this street?
No, that street.
This one?
The area 100 as the exit.
Okay.
So your traffic data. I haven't seen the recent traffic count, but doing your traffic count, there's no way. So let's just go with 205 additional vehicles multiple times per day. You're not going to be able to. That infrastructure wasn't designed for a high capacity development.
Great comment. We haven't done a traffic study,
So that was my next question: as a traffic impact study is done.
Yeah, so we haven't issued one yet. That'll be part of the planning submittal process that we go through. We'll do a traffic impact analysis.
What would be the plan B?
What would be what?
The
Plan
plan B?
B? We don't have a,
You will not be able to use that street, so do you have an
in terms of the access, well, the Plan B, if we can't design it the way that we propose, we'll have to work with the city and get their comments in terms of where we can. I mean, obviously another access point would be off the other side of Wooddale. We're intentionally trying to avoid that to lessen the traffic impact to the neighborhood.
I hope the city hears this loud and clear. We do not want an access out there.
Yes, and I understand that, and that's why we designed this way. So that's our intention.
Can they change that? Can they change their mind willy-nilly and do a project?
Well, so there's a city design review process that you go through that city staff can also speak to, maybe more intently than I can, but the city does, they provide a lot of comments, they review all of our drawings. It's a pretty intense process, and they're ultimately making the final approval, so.
Okay, city, are you gonna all of a sudden make a exit for that project on the other side of Woodville?
Well, I'm not going to commit today what is going to be required. We have not started a review of the process of this plan at this point. We don't have the necessary traffic studies to understand what is going to come out of that. But I will say that any number of things can change on the plan in the process. Folks that were watching the new congregational church application saw a number of changes to that during the process. So obviously, part of the process is to gain input from others, to study it, to review our systems internally for infrastructure or other items, and also for planning commission and city council to review. So many things can change during the process. Nothing is set in stone, and including a change to the access. That is a possibility. I'm not saying that it is going to happen. It could happen, but it could happen.
We don't want that, just so you know that already. And will we be
So going back to the traffic impact.
So,
I'm really curious about that.
again, my name's Sean Walther. I'm the planning manager. Can you repeat the question just so we can start from that? Was it about the process?
Will we be notified?
Okay.
If you decide to exit onto Wooddale into our neighborhood, all these cars dumping it, and not only that, there's going to be people coming from Excelsior Boulevard who are going to go, oh, you know what, we can get over to 7. Because they used to do that. We live on Zenwood, and before they closed it off there, we were a thoroughfare. And if you open that, our neighborhood's going to become a thoroughfare again for people who want to go to, who don't want to get on 100 and want to go to 7.
Okay, I heard a couple of things in that concern, and I'll address those if I recall. You can circle back to it. But let's talk about the process first. First of all, we do not have an application at this point. We know that an application is in the process, that they're working to prepare one, and that is why they're here talking with you early to get your input and be able to make some changes to the site plan and to the proposal for us. Our process begins when there's a formal application. We receive that, we have 60 days, and we can sometimes extend that to 120 days to review and fully act on a proposal. That is to approve it, deny it, approve it with conditions, etc. So we have a timeline that begins at that point. The process includes a public hearing with our planning commission. And then it moves on to city council with a recommendation from the planning commission. And city council makes final decision. The planning commission simply makes recommendations. The public hearing process, we notify neighbors, we notify property owners that are within, I believe it's 500 feet in this situation. Sometimes it's 350. It's 500 feet in this case. And they'll receive a notice at least 10 days before the public hearing is held. In addition to that, we put a notice into the newspaper, and those two things are required by state law. In addition to that, we have a practice at the city to post a sign on the property indicating that an application's been received with a link to our website where you can get more information about the project, about the process, and the next steps. In addition to that, we also, especially in a organized neighborhood like the Elmwood, we contact the neighborhood leaders, and it's an opportunity for them to share out with whatever communications you may have, whether it's a newsletter or an email list or what have you. And then finally, we also take advantage of Nextdoor, and we will post a notice on Nextdoor as well. So we take a number of steps to notify people about the public hearing itself. From that point forward, it is, it works its way through the process. There aren't additional notifications, but we do try to be clear each time, like, here's when we're scheduled to go to that next meeting. We post the information on the website. It's available for people to follow along the process and understand any changes that may occur throughout the process. And then the city council, although they do not hold a public hearing necessarily on the item, any item on their agenda, folks can address an item at that agenda. The public hearing is held at the Planning Commission, however.
So usually when you start this process, the city does, do you make a determination in one time, or does it take more than 1 or 2 meetings to finalize all this?
It varies, but typically in a process like this, it's one planning commission meeting, one city council meeting, and then there's another council meeting that may or may not have discussion. But this type of application usually requires 2 meetings from the city council. If there were a unanimous decision, one way or the other, that ends the process if it's a denial. If it's unanimous for approval, for instance, in the first reading of a action, then we usually will add that to the consent agenda, and it's not an item that's discussed at the next meeting. But there are opportunities. Again, we try to do our best to do the things that we can control well, which is communications, and so we do our best to try to keep you up to date on what is happening. And the website is the best option. If you don't have access to that, our project planner or lead planner, Jacqueline Kramer, who's arrived, is usually the first point of contact, and others in our planning and zoning staff can assist you as well.
Question, as the planning manager, do we have a current traffic count of what Wooddale is as the exit of 100? I come from the engineering side, and traffic engineering in particular. Do we have a current traffic count? Because I would guess if you took the MnDOT spec, an exit from a main arterial freeway of Highway 100, that's an uncontrolled intersection that they will both be crossing to go northbound Wooddale. That typical intersection is not even allowed under the MnDOT spec. So now you have people exiting Highway 100 at a high rate of speed. Again, we live on Wooddale, so we experience this every day. As they exit, this type of development is not designed, that road was not designed to even handle what Highway 100 dumping off at right now, and now we're going to add 205 more spaces, or more, depending if we get overflow onto the city street. Do we have current traffic counts so we can see what the difference is?
We do counts I believe it's every 3 years.
3 to 4.
On this type of street, like Wooddale. And so I do not know what the most recent one is, but that's something that we will
But let's talk about the uncontrolled intersection is actually the concern. So you have an uncontrolled intersection.
I understand the concern, sir. I just have not reviewed the information yet, so I don't have a recommendation.
So I just want to bring up that point of the uncontrolled intersection for northbound, literally crossing an exit from Highway 100 southbound. MnDOT would say not a chance. They're not even letting you cross any of these highways anymore, or exiting. They're getting rid of all of those entrances to the exit and entrance to any major arterial freeway. So
Yes,
this
sir,
is a
but
concern.
this is an existing access point.
But this is an existing property as an R3, not as a high-density housing.
It's also a civic use of a church, which also has high traffic volumes.
Typically 2 to 3 days, not as 7 day a week, 365 days a year.
Well, it's also, they've also operated daycare from this facility, so those do generate trips during the peak time.
Right, but they're not doing 205 people. Yeah.
Again, sir, I'm not gonna make this a back and forth. I came up to here to address one specific item, which was specifically the process. This is the developers meeting.
That will eventually have Burlington and Micro Center with 500 to 700 units over there too. So it just can't handle it there already. I exit that all the time, and there's supposed to be a center turn lane for also Micro
We're not unaware of the current conditions.
One
Yeah,
question.
yes, sir.
You stated this, I can't remember, did you say that the city council makes the final determination on whether the building proceeds or not?
Correct. The application, and I'm going to look to Jacqueline if I get this wrong, includes a comprehensive plan amendment. That is a change from the civic land use that recognizes the current use of the facility, of the site, to, is it medium or high density? High density residential. That is the proposal. In addition to that, there's a request for a rezoning, so from R3 to planned unit development. And then finally, there may be also a plat that's involved. So in other words, creating a lot and block description for the property. So there's at least 3 applications that we're aware of at this stage. In addition to the tax increment financing request for the project. So all of those, I should say, the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning are discretionary decisions by the city, whether or not to pursue that. And so that is a city council decision in the end, yes.
So on the current zoning, Sean, what is the number for the current zone 2.9 acre property?
R3.
Well, currently, so in R3, zoning allows for 1 and 2 family residences.
Okay, and the number of units and the height?
I believe it's 3 stories maximum under R3. And the density, I'm going to have to just give you a rough guess. I think it's between 5 and 7 units per acre. If I'm off, I apologize. It might be higher. It might be in that 12 unit range. Jacqueline, if you can correct me if you know exactly.
I think it's 11 to 12.
11 to 12 units per acre. Thank you. I apologize.
I can't stress this traffic impact. So again, 80,000 pound vehicles exiting, that's where we need that traffic data to show. That uncontrolled intersection is going to be a problem not only for the motorists, but for the fire department, et cetera, because you're going to have multiple 80,000 pound vehicles exiting daily. I live on Wooddale. I see it every day. I hear it. It shakes the building all day long. And at an uncontrolled intersection, at the rate that they're traveling, it's just not even allowed in traffic engineering. So how are they going to navigate that issue other than send them through the neighborhood?
Again, first of all, determining that it is an issue is yet to be determined. We do not have the study to show that. And then second of all, the ways to mitigate that are, there are more than just one way to mitigate it, right? So I'm not going to commit right now to what that would be.
Well, the only way to navigate that without putting a stop limit would be a roundabout in order to slow the traffic impact to the point that would be safe for navigation on the northbound. So a line left northbound Wooddale with that 100 would be a roundabout. So the city is going to put in a roundabout there in order to mitigate that traffic impact. Coming from an arterial freeway. And I speak as
All I can say at this moment is that is not part of this initial proposal that we're aware of.
But then how's the city getting away with this? There's no way Midtown will allow that on any exit or entrance to Highway 100 anywhere else in the metro.
Well, sir, again,
Towards zero death.
during the review process, we do notify MnDOT as well as other surrounding jurisdictions, and we'll receive comments from them.
Who's that council member in here right now?
Councilmember Lynette Dumalag is here.
And again, my role is to listen, and I've reviewed those, so.
We appreciate that.
So I just had a question. I know there's been a lot of concern about traffic, and you mentioned, and I apologize because I was late, but that addressing the concerns of traffic wasn't something that was in scope for this meeting, but what is the plan to address? Because we're all here from the neighborhood, and I know that's why a majority of us are here, is because we have concerns about the traffic, and we have families, and we have kids, and we walk our dogs, and so when will that be addressed, or how will that be addressed with this proposal?
So what we'll do is we'll commission a traffic study. It's going to be part of the planning submittal to the city. So, when the time is right to get that information put together, we'll do that. And that will determine the traffic counts, and give us a more thorough review of the traffic impact in the area. So,
But then that takes into account current state.
well, it takes into account current and future. So what it'll do is it'll say, okay, the current traffic is this, and it's going to say, based on this new project, here's the impact. So it puts together statistical data based on the new project.
Okay, and then who puts that together? Like who provides that data? And
So there's a few companies that do it. I'm blanking on the name of the one right now. That's kind of the primary one, but there's a few companies in town that specifically focus on that.
okay, and as the developers, you guys hired that.
We do, yeah. We order the traffic studies, yeah.
And that's all completed before you break ground.
Yes, I mean, that's going to be part of our planning submittal, which is the initial submittal and review by city staff prior to even going in front of the planning commission or the city council.
I'm just wondering why we're being shown the outcome of this new apartment and neighborhood rather than us dealing with the traffic and all these other things that are mentioned now. Why wasn't that dealt with first, doing a study first before planning this apartment?
So this meeting right now is the initial concept meeting with you all. We typically do not do that study at this point. This was to gather initial feedback from the neighborhood before putting together the planning submittal and doing the traffic study. So just as a point of process, we really never do those studies at this point in time. That'll be kind of a next step that we'll do. So.
Why wouldn't it be done when the idea of this apartment complex thought of? Why not look at all these different areas ahead of time just to rule out, well, this will work, or we need a different plan for this, rather than starting after the fact?
It's just not part of our standard process that we do for any of our development projects, so.
So I had a question, and I'm no example, but I see this church as a spiritual root. Is your development are they Lutheran, are they Methodist, obviously anybody who lives there can have their own beliefs, but I think taking a church out of a community is a loss.
As the pastor here, I would like to address that. Nobody is taking this church out of this community. We are choosing to relocate because we have more building and grounds than we need. We need to simplify and we need to downsize, but no one is taking us out. We are choosing to relocate for some various reasons. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
Just a point of clarification, you said you guys don't normally do a traffic impact study up front. You are not the rule. Most cities and or developers have to do a traffic impact study before they even put that first draft forward.
I would.
And coming.
Yeah, we haven't submitted to the city yet, though we're planning on doing it.
Right. Prior to that, typically most developers work with the city to do a traffic impact study before they even waste their time to bring that forward.
I would disagree with that. I mean, I can't speak for other developers. I can speak for our process.
Well, that's what I said. You are the anomaly.
Okay.
Coming from that background, working both for Hennepin County and for a consulting firm doing traffic engineering studies. Most developers do that on the front end because they don't want to waste their time if they can't meet the needs of the infrastructure because of the traffic.
We're going to do a study, so I don't know what else to say to you.
Flip-flops were a bad choice today.
One thing we haven't heard yet is about the green space. I see there's trees on your plan and there seems to be a green square of some kind. Could you comment on the green space? What your plans
be
are
happy
for
to. In fact, PJ, I might even have you
Excuse me,
come.
I'm not done. What your plans for installation and ongoing maintenance? Thank you.
For installation of landscaping?
Yes.
There'll be a top lot for kids, playground area for kids, there'll be a dog run area, patio area for grilling, just kind of typically amenities we do from the outside.
See, they're talking more about plantings, greenery, stuff like that.
Trees that don't, there'll be trees that meet all the city code.
shrubs, plantings, everything will meet the city requirements per city code. So that's part of their building pack, our maintenance, and they.
We hire a third-party landscape and management company that'll basically oversee the grass cutting and the lawn care maintenance. By management company, I mean that will manage the lawn care and the landscape.
So what is the green space ratio to units?
I don't honestly know that off the top of my head. And that's something we can gather information and get it to you. I just don't know off the top of my head what it is.
Typical for our sites we work on with real estate equities, it's impervious areas about to 70-80%. Well, impervious area, parking lot, and then green space is 20 to 30% of the site. And we do actually have more on this site because the whole southern half there is all part of a MnDOT easement. So there is actually will be more green space on this site than a typical one for us.
Sean, is that congruent with the area that built in park?
Sorry,
Is for the Sean, is that congruent with the builds in St. Louis Park? What is the percentage that has to be left for green space? Or they have to pay in additional for it. So like the firehouse went over its limit for green space usage, and they had to pay it into a fund. Okay? It's happened over here with Boston's home development too. They went over their green space, they kick out cash to a fund to the city. So is there a percentile or something?
All right, so I don't have, it's, our code is not flat out just the percentage of green space. We have a couple of different requirements. One of them we call designed outdoor recreation area. That is required to be 12% of the property minimum. And so that's areas and spaces where people are meant to be, whether it's passive or active. In addition to that, we have landscaping requirements that include tree planting counts based on either the size of the building or the perimeter of the site, and that goes for trees and for shrubs. On higher density developments, it is a challenge to meet those requirements because we have a very high standard for that. So we do have some alternative landscaping provisions in our ordinance that we frequently do use on these higher density, I don't know about this site, but other projects, because this does have quite a long, stretch of frontage along both Wooddale and Highway 100. And so those measures might include things as elaborate as a green roof, or or it might be public art. It may be xeriscape, so another native landscaping that doesn't require watering. Those are elements that our code promotes, and we recognize that as an option. If there is any tree removal that occurs during a project, we also have a tree preservation ordinance, and while it doesn't prevent them from removing trees, it does come at a cost. So if they do not replant enough trees per caliper inch, they have to pay into the city's tree fund, which then funds our public space tree plantings, whether that's right-of-way or public parks or what have you. And those are typically done in the vicinity, but not necessarily at the site when the planting is, when it occurs from the city. So there's a number of measures. We take that very seriously. We understand our goals, and seeing trees removed is not pleasant, but sometimes required for these redevelopment projects, as well as city construction projects. It just seems unavoidable.
I have a question on the footprint of your building. Mm-hmm. Will it be approximately where this building sits? How far is it from the highway?
Yeah, so I think from where we're standing right now, so this is the edge of the three-story light right here. That would likely be kind of right by the front entrance here, right?
Pretty close.
Yeah, close to that, generally speaking.
So your building's going to pretty much image where this building's sitting, other than this section here?
Yeah, I would generally say that's accurate. Obviously, it's taller. It's 3 stories and then 4 stories on the main.
Is that just green space in front of there, or is that going to be used by the residents somehow?
The space in front of the building?
Yeah.
So it's part of the MnDOT right away, so we won't frankly have a lot of control over, you know, that land because we don't own it. But it's going to be green space that MnDOT frankly owns, so the residents won't be able to use that. We are going to have, we're planning on a rooftop patio here. Again, we've got a playground, we've got another grilling area outside plan, and then we've got a large dog run plan as well. So those are kind of the outside amenities. There's bike parking too.
So,
for the residents to use.
A couple of quick questions here. One's just for the record, I live right on Cambridge Street. It's about 5 houses away from the project. Totally against it, don't want to see it. Curious question. One is, are the garbage dumping, that can be inside or outside?
That'll be inside the building, so there'll be trash chutes, and it'll go to the underground parking area.
Okay. As far as parking goes, have you dealt at all with visitation? Meaning, when people come to visit, and you're going to have a party, and heck, you could have 15 people. One weird question: is there a common room?
Yeah. So the common area is on the first floor. We're going to have a large community space for gathering. Okay. There's going to be a fitness center. There's going to be a large lobby as well.
Okay, so where are those cars going to be? Where are they allocated in all of this? Because you could have 20, 25 cars there, and what's going to happen is the people are going to just take in, they're going to come off, they're going to come down Yosemite, they're going to come here, they're going to park right on that street because they're going to go on the entrance at the end of the building by your little dog park. And that whole thing is by Joe and Alley's is just going to be lined up with cars. So, and that's going to be, all of a sudden, that's going to be the ones that are going to loop around on Goodridge, and that's going to be their fly out of the place. And we had that years ago before this was cut off, and it was miserable. We got a ton of young kids in this neighborhood. So, as far as that goes, if there's any way the city can do it, if this thing gets that far, if they can do it and just cut off no parking on that street at all, let them suffer inside here, because there's not enough parking for what's going to, it is not 1.8 per unit. That's not the way it is. Everybody has a car. Everybody's living here is going to have a car, with the exception of the children. So that's it.
I just want to clarify the use of the community space that you asked about and referred to additional cars and usage for that. That's not accessible to the public. That's an internal common area for the use of the residents, and we have controlled access, and we monitor the residents' parking and hand out parking stickers for people using the surface parking lot, and we have assigned visitor parking areas on the surface as well.
They're not in the allocation of the 1.8.
Well, yeah, they're not shown as assigned on this. Yeah. If we dedicated a few to visitors, then I guess you would take that off of the 205 that's available for residents. But if we designated some to visitors, we would reduce the amount of parking. That's not accurate. Nobody can come into the building just to use the community center. Oh, sure. If the residents are using it to have, yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think there's 8 stalls over at the firehouse.
I have another question tell us about the tot lot and the grills that are right across the street from my house. What is in the tot lot?
So the tot lot is ultimately an outdoor playground for children. And then the grilling area is going to be just a patio that likely has a fire pit and a grill. And it's one of 2 locations on the site, including the rooftop patio, for residents to grill lunch or dinner.
Maybe you could move that to the back of the building? I'm being facetious. The other question is, tell me about the dog run. Is that like a fenced-in area?
It will be a fenced-in area, yes.
And people can't just leave their dog out there all day?
That's correct.
And you'll have rules, or you'll be able to manage that doesn't happen? There's a ton of people that walk their dogs around.
Yeah, we will.
All the time.
We definitely have resident guidelines for how to use the dog run. And, you know, the site staff will monitor that regularly too, so. We have dog runs at all of our new projects. We find that a fair amount of residents do have dogs, so it's important to have them.
My dog actually uses his backyard to run.
Does he?
I imagine that's gonna go away.
Is it a safe assumption that there'd be less traffic if it was a senior low-income household?
I would say generally that's a safe assumption, yeah. I mean, senior buildings typically have more of a higher concentration of 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, and then just the older demographic.
The city is pressuring the developing unit people here to put in workforce housing, that's what I'm hearing?
That's the Met household.
We're not getting pressured to do that. We wouldn't do a senior project here, it just doesn't work for what we do. Financially, so we were proposing kind of our own project. I know there was a previous project that was proposed, but we had no involvement in that.
The previous project, I believe, was half the size of this one.
That's what I heard.
So this is for the city. The most recent development on Outline that's being proposed is actually in the planning, it's gone through all the steps. Just for clarification, that's a 10% low income, is that correct? Off Outline?
I believe that's 10% at 50% AMI. I believe that is clear.
It's not 100%, that's correct. So it's I thought I read somewhere it was 10%, but.
That's why it says 10% at 50% of area median income.
So it's not 100%.
No, it is not.
Sean, what is the level that housing has to be with the affordable in order to get the tax increment financing? Because that's pretty much what every developer wants to do. So if we spread all of the affordable housing out through these developments and get mixed, what is the percent? Is it like 17 or 20% or something?
The city's inclusionary housing policy, so that's typically any development that requests either tax increment financing or requests a planned unit development such as this one, is required to have one of 3 different minimum thresholds. So either 20% of the units affordable at 60% of the area median income, or 10% of the units at 50% AMI, or 5% of the units at 30% AMI. Most of the developments that we've seen have come in at the 50 and 60% AMI level. 30% is just really challenging to do. The only exception to that is, I think it was Union Congregational Church that has an income averaging that allows between 30 and 80%. So that's typically the thresholds that's required minimums. But frankly, inclusionary housing is one of our city council's strategic priorities, and they warmly received the all affordable proposal that came in for the Union Congregational Church.
Sean, are there any other that are 100% affordable?
We have a proposal for Rise on 7, which is over near Knollwood. That is also 100%.
It's across from Chick-fil-A. It's the other church.
I'm coming.
This is probably a question for the city also, not necessarily, but I think it's important for you guys as developers to hear this also. Again, personally, sorry I was late, but as a resident of this neighborhood, I'm not concerned about the low income aspect at all. I welcome that. It's more that there's multiple housing developments planned within Elmwood, within Elmwood. And what is the city's plan for, how are they looking at this holistically in terms of 4 units going in or 3 units going in all within the Elmwood neighborhood? And if they're all as big as this, again, we're getting back to traffic and safety for the kids walking around and playing around and people walking their dogs. So how are we considering that holistically?
Again, I feel like I will answer the question, but I feel like we're asking us a lot of questions when the question should be directed to the developer, because our formal process has not yet begun. But the city did just adopt a 2040 comprehensive plan that includes a land use plan. One of the elements of that is that sites that are near and surrounding the light rail, as part of the regional policy as well as the city's policy, requires that new redevelopments with the average density of new developments around the LRT stations be at 50 units per acre. That's the average of the overall redevelopment that occurs in those areas. That's a bare minimum. So we have made some adjustments in the area to our both our zoning regulations and our land use plans. We've done traffic studies that broadly and holistically look at those proposed densities and tried to identify any areas of concern that resulted. Based on the 2040 land use plan, we've not identified issues at this specific location. However, I'll recognize that this particular site was not studied as a high-density development. It was studied as a civic use. And so that is an element that needs to be considered during this process.
So I have a question that is not related to the city or traffic, actually to the development here. I see there is a flat roof, and you talked solar. Can you elaborate on the solar installations on the roof, or is it possible to use the roof as some kind of a community space, a rooftop for gatherings?
Yeah. So we are planning to do solar panels on the roof. And in terms of some of the design elements of that, I mean, Petro might be able to speak to that a little bit more than I can. But we are planning to do full solar panels on the roof. The roof also has designed a rooftop patio. So you'll see right over here is a patio. So what that would have is kind of a smaller interior club room for people to use, and then a patio for people to use as well. The patio would have grills. It might have some kind of a fire pit as well. So it's proceeding.
How many kilowatts you get out of the solar installation?
You know, honestly, yeah, we haven't done the analysis yet. I can't really speak to that.
What's the capacity for the rooftop?
Capacity weight-wise?
What's the capacity of people that can be up there?
We haven't fully designed it yet. I mean,
Maximum 50 people, maximum. 50.
Is there anything to do with the sound ordinance part of this program? Sound ordinance?
For our units?
For the whole neighborhood that's going to be impacted by the volume of people moving in. How can we bring that up?
It's more of a city question, I think, than it is.
She was asking about a noise ordinance of some kind in regards to the influx of people coming into the neighborhood with this project. I'm just
I don't really have an answer for that.
Thank you. Hello. I'm Lynette. I'm your city council person. So I was here mainly to listen to all of your concerns here related to this development project. It sounded like a lot of questions were sent to city staff, but you also have questions around policy. So I will be here after this meeting so that we keep things moving for the developer if you have specific questions for the developer. But it sounds like you have specific questions for me as your representative. So I'll be here afterwards to answer anything and take some feedback, whether it's related to this project or whether it's related to other things in this area, which it sounds like there is. Okay.
So you wouldn't tear down the building until you get approval from the city?
Yeah, that's correct. We wouldn't tear down the building until we have full city approvals, a building permit, and we've ultimately closed on the site.
So my question might be for you. I'm a
cheerleader for home ownership, and I'm wondering why apartments were chosen instead of condos. How?
Just to be clear on part of how this all went down is we as a congregation had to make a very difficult decision to decide to sell our property for lots of reasons, some of them practical, some of them missional, and we just put the building on the market, and this is the offer that came our way. So what is happening on this property is completely disconnected from us, other than the fact that we're the ones selling it. That being said, I will say, as a pastor, and I know it impacts y'all in your neighborhood, but I'm very much for low-income housing and workforce housing, and I think some really good and beautiful things could come out of this, but I also know that I'm not the one living in the neighborhood. So I just wanted to say that. But I don't know, does that answer your question for me, or is there something you wanted? Okay.
Did you want me to address that question, by the way? Yeah, we just because we don't do condos, we don't do home ownership. We develop apartment buildings, so it's just not part of what we do, and not ultimately what we as a developer would propose to do on this site.
And what is the barrier to condos? Nobody wants to build them because long-term business?
There's a number of aspects, to condos that, again, we don't do condos, so I don't want to speak out of line, but the financing's complicated, the warranty issues are complicated. There's a number of factors with condos that have made them more difficult to build, which is part of why we don't see as many getting built these days.
Well, the Rotland development over here with the townhomes and then the condos in between and then the 55-plus condos, that all started as just apartments, okay? So, and it was a parking lot to begin with for most of it with Minnesota Rubber. And the city allowed a knockout of 3 houses, I think, but they were supposed to replace them. And huge negotiations took place, and they finally came up with the the townhomes facing to the south to kind of give it a transitional buffer into the rest of the high-density development. So that's the point of origin over there. This is kind of high density in the face of several residents plus high density traffic egress onto Goodrich and Cambridge. So, I mean, that's, those are the elements that I think from what I'm hearing from most of the public, the cut through traffic, you're taking sleepy little Goodrich and sleepy little Cambridge, and then all the side streets of the funnel in and out twice a day, and it's gonna impact the streets and the neighborhood. So, and you've got 2 parks very close. So, and Paul, just I know that the church has known for several years that this was coming. Okay, and I've talked to other trustees before. My scout troop has been here for years, and I'm very well aware of that. And there could have been, in my judgment, but it's too late now, some other form of communication with the neighborhood, some other form of working to find the right fit, etc. Just to throw something up for sale is something that a homeowner that wants to get out does. So I'm just giving that feedback, and it's too late at this point for the 2 developers that have already made the offers and one that backed out. So.
Okay.
Feel free to join our email group. We're also on Nextdoor, folks. Elmwood.mn or slp.mn, I think, is our Gmail. So if you want to get your name on that list, elmwood.slp.mn at Gmail. Thank you, Pastor Paul, for doing all the handiwork here. Thank you to both Sean and Jacqueline for being here and answering questions. It's always appreciated. Thank you to Alex, first time to meet you in person. Hope you're doing well. Thank you to Councilmember Dumalog for being here as well. So My quick question, I have kind of a little variation of it, but so the underground parking, the 117 spaces, will that be 1 per unit plus 3 extras for staff or maintenance or something like that?
Generally, we don't have staff and maintenance parking underground. We'll probably have staff and maintenance park on surface parking. And in terms of 1 per unit, I mean, how we allocate the underground parking is kind of on a first come, first served basis for the residents in the building, so.
And will it be based then on a cost or an additional fee in order to be able to have that luxury?
It will. So the parking underground at our buildings is typically in the $75 per unit range. I would anticipate that the parking here would be in that range too.
Understood. And the apartments I've lived in, that's been similar. It's one of the things I found as a disadvantage as a renter was having to pay that additional money. And if you're building an affordable project, I think it'd be great if each unit got at least 1 spot underground so that they knew that they could have that type of protection from weather, climate, everything else. And providing some equity to them instead of being forced out onto the lots outside or onto the streets nearby. I think one of the things as a neighborhood we want to try to avoid here is turning into permit parking with light rail coming. I think if we saw from the fire station open house, the streets fill up pretty quick, and that's great. That's nice for those one-time events, but I think something to keep in mind. So I would stress that that's a possibility to provide 1 unit or 1 space per unit, and provide it in the cost of what they're paying per month. That would be a great incentive to them, and help with the transit-oriented development nature of the area. Now, there's no guarantee that being close to light rail that everyone's going to give up their car and take the light rail everywhere. So that'd be one of my recommendations. I hope that that some of the things that are being said here tonight can get echoed. I appreciate staff hearing them. I hope that'll help you with your guys' process. And Councilmember Dulag, I hope you take note that there's a lot of people who have concerns. So thank you much. Again, elmwood.slp.mn@gmail. That's the neighborhood email address. If you email it, we'll get you on the list. And when there's meetings like this and other things, we'll let you know.
Thank you for your comments, JW.
Another thing that might be concerned is utilities, gas, water, everything's going to have to be increased a lot. It can be expensive. Who pays for that? The city or you guys pay for that?
So the tenants do pay for the utility costs. They pay for gas and electric, but there's utility allowance factored into the net rent that they're paying. So there's a deduction, frankly, from what the gross rents are to the net rental rate, and then the tenants pay their own utilities. So there is a discounted factored into their rent based on utility costs.
Will the tenants receive some of the benefit of the solar that you're putting in, or is that all go back to the owner of the building or the city?
So to do full solar on a roof generally fuels about 75% of the common areas of the building. Unfortunately, there's not enough solar generated to actually fuel the electricity in the apartment units. So it would offset the costs of the common areas of the building. It would not be an offset to the tenants.
So is this considered a green build as PTL is coming over on Union Church?
So the building's going to be designed to Minnesota Green Community Standards. In terms of a green build, there's a green design process that we'll undergo with the city. In terms of reviewing, there will be a separate consultant hired for that process. We haven't fully vetted the design yet, so this is very early on in the process, so the building hasn't frankly been designed yet.
And then you're subsidized for that from state, federal, et cetera. Can you do a green build, or how does that work?
So we're not. I mean, what we will be applying for this project is tax increment financing, and then also the 4% low-income housing tax credit program. And those two tools will allow us to just ultimately subsidize the overall project. But in terms of getting additional subsidy, there really isn't anything available. So it's just going to be additional costs to the project that we have to absorb.
Okay, so on another note too, in looking at the other development with Union Congregational, PPL flips it into a nonprofit status for the management of it. Is your management firm and build firm nonprofit?
No, we're a for-profit.
You're for-profit.
We are.
So it will not move. One of the concerns over with PPL and the union was for years, union being a church has been nonprofit, and then the new developer walks in, gets all incentives, gets grants from the Met Council for the build, which are distributed 2 times each year, and then they turn around and get subsidized housing, and then turn around and run it as a nonprofit. So it's you know, it's a good way to make a buck, man. So in my opinion. So anyway.
Is there any other comments from anybody?
You act as your own general contractor?
We don't. We hire general contractors to build our projects.
How do you control on-site traffic
During
during construction?
construction?
Yes.
So our general contractor is in charge of that. Typically, these projects have 3 to 4 different individuals from the general contracting company that are working.
There'll be a lot of traffic on our local streets because of the construction activity, so how is that going to be controlled?
It's going to be controlled by the general contractor.
You cannot dictate to him as to what he...
We can definitely influence, yeah. I mean, we can definitely, and happy to hear your feedback on that if this project does move ahead. We're happy to help advise the general contractor, frankly, on how to mitigate traffic issues in the neighborhood with construction. So yeah, we definitely are happy to get involved in that. Ultimately, the general contractor is going to be overseeing the day-to-day of that, but we're happy to get involved. And if it becomes a problem, we're happy to obviously do whatever we can to mitigate the issue.
What are you proposing for the exterior finishes on the building?
For the exterior finishes? So it's lap siding, it's brick, it's metal siding.
Metal siding, yeah, so you'll have metal siding, concrete fiberboard material as well. So again, low maintenance, high quality, very durable. Once you install it, I mean, basically the next time you'll see any real exterior modification will be 25 years or so from the point of when construction starts. Energy Star windows, and you name it. It's really high quality. It's basically a comparison of any other project you're seeing built right now.
Mm-hmm.
Motion to adjourn?
Well, I'm happy to answer any other questions. If anybody wants to come up individually, we're all here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments. What I can tell you is we'll work diligently. We'll try to address as many of your comments as we can. We want to work with you in the neighborhood. And I want to thank everybody, Councilmember Dumalog for coming, the city staff for coming, and all of you, frankly, for coming. And thank you for hosting this event. Really appreciate that.
I have one more comment.
But Brad?
Is kind of drag their feet on putting in traffic control things that were promised until it's too late. What happened, we took phase 1 of the Quayar Village, and then as we were going into the second phase of the Quayar Village, we started challenging to say, when will the traffic lights be put on there? And the answer ended up being after a senior resident was killed trying to cross there in front of the village. Okay? And then immediately, within less than a year, the order takes 6 months to order the poles, etc., but they threw it in right away. But they had told us less than 4 years, and we dragged their feet on it. You have to, when you're doing traffic counts on not just this development, you have to look at the next phase of developments and probably
Fair enough. Thank you for speaking your mind on that.
Is there going to be a city council meeting specifically on this topic that the residents can come to? You can have
You can certainly come to a city council meeting where this might be, you know, if it goes through planning and then it comes to city council, you can certainly come to a city council meeting to discuss.
I'm actually talking about
Before. Correct. So how, again, we want to make sure that we don't have too many so I should back up. How open meeting laws work is that we can't gather in one spot to talk to all of you about a project when it hasn't come through the city process first. So this is the first step in which you gave feedback to the developer. But where you have access to me is that I'm your city council member. Now that doesn't mean that you can't reach out to the other city council members as well. We do have 4 ward reps, we do have 2 at-large, and we have the mayor. So, but you can't all meet with us at the same time because that's a violation of open meeting laws. Does that make sense? You can certainly come to us individually, but we can't all gather if it's not a public meeting.
why wouldn't it be considered a public meeting?
You can after it comes, because you just asked whether or not it's too late. So again, you can express your concerns to me, you can express your concerns to anyone on council, including the mayor, and meet with them individually, or, you know, no more than 3, because that's a violation of open meeting laws. We can't make public decisions. We can't make decisions about you without the public knowing. Does that make sense?
You're saying that she can't meet with all of you, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's either she can't or you can't.
No, but all of us can.
Yeah,
All of us can, but just she couldn't meet with all of you.
correct. And you. So if you're meeting, yes,
Wanted to meet with all of you, not that.
you can meet with us individually or no more than 3. Yes, because obviously we don't want to make decisions without the public eye and scrutiny. That's unfair, and it's yeah. What? Yeah. Well, that's another meeting, my dear. So, but again, I will be here afterwards because it sounds like there are other issues that people want to discuss that don't involve this particular development. And I am also aware and have on my calendar the Elmwood neighborhood meeting that I believe the neighborhood, leaders.
So a month from today,
Yep.
on Tuesday, Thursday, October 20th.
Yes.
7 p.m. actually here. And we worked out that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, here.
at the church. Okay. It won't be there.
Put that on your calendar. So I will be here, and I believe other staff will be here as well. We can talk about other things broadly neighborhood related. But again, this was really intended for the developer to talk preliminary about this design, preliminary about this concept, and get feedback from you. So.
Yeah, not under the microphone. I have an obnoxious voice. I apologize in advance. So, I guess here's my frustration. I mean, the developers have done a nice job presenting this, and certainly you all are doing what you do, right? You find a property you like, you want to develop it, that's your deal. My question is more for, and not even city staff, I mean, you all are doing your job, you do a nice job, you're here, you're doing the right stuff. My question all comes down to elected representatives, right? I would like to know where you stand on this project well before October 28th.
And Blake, I understand that, and we have been emailing back and forth. There isn't an application to approve or not approve. And in fact, there is precedent with other cities where, not saying that you're going to do this, but a developer has sued a city because they expressly said, I'm going to vote yes or no, and I want you to trade a favor. So again, we have to go through this process. The church is selling to another entity that is, regardless of what, we're not involved with that, but we're through this process, and that's what we're doing. So again, I cannot comment on whether or not I'm going to approve or disapprove this project because it is inappropriate, and frankly, it is illegal. People have been sued.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on that. I just have a couple of questions for you. You are not our elected official. Our last elected official skirted out of town and moved into Minneapolis for some inappropriate behavior, which the charter has now brought up a means of having a check and balance and outside investigations. And right now the council is trying to throw that out the door so they can't be investigated and looked at. And so currently you don't speak for me, okay, because you were selected by the council, okay? You're coming up for election this next year, okay, in November this year, okay? So you've been on just by being appointed from some interviews, and I have concerns with that you're kind of the deciding factor with how things go. And how things go with St. Louis Park is if you're the ward representative, you vote yes on it, all the other little ducklings follow suit. And that's how it works. We learned that with all the Met Council sidewalks, roundabouts, with everything that's in the developments around here, and the expansions. So I'm concerned with that, number one. I'm concerned of you being a realtor that deals with commercial property. That's a conflict of interest. And then I'm also concerned with you being on the board of a nonprofit for affordable housing up until April, and then finally stepping down off that. So, I'm looking for transparency. I'm looking to find out who the heck you are.
Sure.
I'm looking to find out really what's going on, because you're going to be making a decision that impacts all of our households. And the last representative, as well as the mayor and other representatives on the council, have the concept drilled into their head, not in my neighborhood, okay? And Mincata Vista is where you live, and that's where Ann Mavity lived. Her whole concept was not in my neighborhood. I talked to a developer that wanted to buy some duplexes over there. He's a landowner over here. And he came up with the same thing. He said, nope, he got poo-pooed, So it's, I really want to hear what's up. And my understanding is, I was cut out of a meeting, unable to attend it or whatever, but you did meet two of our leads for the neighborhood board. And the feedback that I got from them was that you've been in communication, you're quite often in communication with Ann Mavity, and you're friends with her.
Sure.
I see conflict of interest in 3 levels, and I'd like you to speak to that if you're going to be deciding for this neighborhood. For me, it's hypocritical, okay? And I think just lay all the cards on the table, girlfriend.
That's not appropriate, Brad.
So
that is not appropriate. You don't talk to anybody that way, let alone the city council member.
So